Al, what is it about free will that elicits such emotional excitement in philosophers and psychologists, neurologists? What is the nature of it? To ordinary people, it seems so simple.
Free will means different things to different people. Somewhere along the line, I thought of a gas station analogy for free will. So at gas stations, you can get regular gas, you can get mid-grade gas, or you can get premium. And people think about free will in different ways. The regular way of thinking about free will is like this. Sufficient for having free will would be just that you're sane and rational. Nobody's pushing you around. There's no compulsion or coercion. You're well informed, and you make decisions on the basis of reasons. That would be enough. When you bump up to the mid-grade, you need to add something to this. And what you have to add is that at the very moment you made a decision, everything being the same right up until then, you could have done otherwise. One way to think about it, although this can be confusing, is in terms of possible universes. So in the actual universe, at a certain time, you make a certain decision. For example, you decide to go to Cool Beans restaurant tonight. If that decision is free, then on this mid-grade conception of free will, there'd have to be a possible universe where absolutely everything is the same right up until then, all the laws of nature and the entire past. And at that moment, instead of making that decision, you make another one. Maybe you decide to go to Chez Pierre for dinner. Okay, so that's the mid-grade conception. I'll get to the third, and then we can go back and think about these different ideas of free will. On the third one, that's not enough for free will either, what we added in the second model. You also need to have a non-physical soul or a non-physical mind. And there are, some people who hold that view of free will. So when people ask me what's exciting about free will, for example, one thing I always wonder is, well, what do they mean by it? Which one of these three do they have in mind, or do they have any of them in mind? Something else, or haven't they thought about it enough to have any kind of detailed view?
Now, if I think about the first one, where I'm rational, I'm sane, nobody's holding a gun to my head or I'm forcing, I don't have an addiction or something. I think that's free will, but you're telling me there has to be something extra, because I don't think that I can't make another decision, but you're telling me that maybe, even though I don't think I can't make another decision, I really can't under the first model. In other words, I think I'm really free to move the book here or here, but because of the whole laws of the universe and how everything mechanistically has worked, it's really predetermined where I would move your book.
Yes, well, this question about even what it is to be able to do otherwise turns out to be very tricky. Now, one way to understand it is the way it's understood on that mid-grade model that I just explained. So you think, I could have done otherwise, only if, everything being the same up until then, there's some scenario where I actually do otherwise. Now, you mentioned determinism too, and some people, some philosophers and others, will tell you that determinism is compatible with being able to do otherwise. It leaves room for it. And you might wonder how that can be. Well, it turns out that the last time I checked, there are about 96 different definitions of determinism in the literature. And so there are many possibilities for confusion. But there's a standard definition of determinism in the philosophical literature. And it's a bit technical, but the basic idea is this: that if a universe is deterministic, then a complete statement of the laws of nature of that universe and a complete description of the universe, of what's going on in the universe at any point in time, entails all other truths about that universe. And this entailment is a matter of foolproof deduction, let's say. So that if a superintelligence knew all the laws of nature, and knew everything that was going on in the universe at this moment in time, it could deduce in a foolproof way, could not make mistakes, everything else that's going to be true.
For however long the future goes.
For however long the future goes.
That's determinism.
That's determinism. Now, on that first conception of free will, you can be sane and rational and so on, do a sane and rational thing, even if your universe is deterministic. Could you have done otherwise? Well, that depends on what that amounts to, on what the ability to do otherwise amounts to. What if it just amounts to, well, you would have done otherwise if your reasons had been slightly different. So if, so we go back to the Cool Beans and the Chez Pierre restaurants, and you're thinking, and it's a close call, and you're about to go for Cool Beans, and I say, hey, what, you know, they have the best burgers in Tallahassee at Chez Pierre. And that tips the scales. I didn't say it in the actual scenario, but in some other scenario that's very similar, I do. That tips the scales, you make a different decision.
But determinism, you're saying, is that, you know, 1 billion years ago, if you had a perfect description of the laws of nature and the conditions at that moment, you could have predicted which restaurant I would go to.
Yes, that's true. And then compatibilists, people who think that determinism is compatible with free will, at least one branch of them, this is sort of like churches actually, one branch of compatibilists claim, yes, and even though you could have predicted in a foolproof way, the superintelligence could have done this, you could have done otherwise in a certain sense, the only sense that really matters for free will. And what is that sense really? Well, that the decisions you make are sensitive to reasons in a pretty robust way, so that if the reasons had been different, the decisions would or might have been different. And that's all you need. Now that's one branch of compatibilists. We can get to the other branch later, maybe.
Let's lay out the universe of terms that we use, because
Okay.
compatibilism, you're telling me, means the universe is totally determined, but yet I have this kind of version of free will, the economy version, the regular
Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
version of free will.
Right.
But that doesn't make me very happy.
Yeah, you
because
want
that
more.
I want more. I want that I really could make a change at that moment.
That's right.
And then I could say to the rest of the universe, you know, make some expletive remark to the history of the universe, because I want to make my own decision. I don't care what you've done up to now.
Yeah. No, good. And that's why, you know, some people want to bump up to the mid-grade.
Now, what do you call that?
I call it, in philosophy.
Yeah.
So we're away from the gas station.
Yeah, right.
This is libertarianism.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with libertarianism in politics.
Right.
So libertarianism is the view that free will is incompatible with determinism, where determinism is understood the way I defined it, and that some people have free will, or maybe a lot of people have free will, exercise it some of the time. So libertarianism is the combination of two theses. Compatibilism is false, and people sometimes act freely. So what libertarians need is not only that determinism not be true, but that actual brain processes in decision-producing streams work in indeterministic ways. And what does that amount to, that they work in indeterministic ways? Well, that the laws, call them laws of human biology, and maybe deeper laws too, laws of physics, that govern those brain processes are probabilistic or stochastic, people like to say, instead of exceptionless. So the laws, together with the condition of a brain at a moment, would leave open different possibilities for decision. That's the kind of thing that libertarians require for free will. So they want the sort of thing that you were gesturing at, which you could think of as real ability to do otherwise, not, you know, what some people see as sort of a sham ability to do otherwise. Yeah, that's what they want. And then among libertarians, there are some who think you can just get by with that, just with sanity, rationality, being good at assessing reasons, and these alternative possibilities of this indeterministic kind at the moment of decision. And those people are called event causal libertarians. Do you really want to know all this stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so they're called event causal libertarians. And some other libertarians say, oh, that's not good enough. That's a lot like deterministic causation, except you have a bit of, you could call it randomness or chance mixed in, or openness. So what you need, in addition to that, is a new sort of way of thinking about causation, where instead of having brain events causing decisions, which cause bodily motions, you have the agent. Agents are just people. Well, if we're talking about human beings, you have the person causing the decision in a direct way. Now, the way some agent causationists think about it is there is this relation called causation, and normally it obtains between an event and an event, like lighting a firecracker and the firecracker exploding. But they say in the case of free actions, that causal relation holds between a person and something like a decision. And if this sounds a bit mysterious, that's because it is. Okay, so now we have the event causal libertarians, and we have the agent causal libertarians. And notice that we haven't come up to this third grade of free will yet, the premium kind, where you introduce souls, non-physical minds. And what happens there is that they say, well, look, agent causation isn't good enough unless the agent is or has a soul, or is or has a non-physical mind. So now we have the sort of sweep. Then the no free will people just say, no free will, doesn't matter which way you conceive of it, or if you conceive of it in certain ways, it's impossible.